Good morning, friends and fellow traders. This is Doug Campbell with Right Way Options, and this is the Morning Market Prep video for April 12th, 2024. Well, let's take a look at what happened overnight. First off, Asian markets had a little bit of a rough night last night. China's exports fell more than expected, and that created some pretty heavy selling in Hong Kong. That tech heavy sector over there sold off over 2% last night. And, well, just only the Nikkei managed to make a little bit of gain overnight. European markets are bullish across the board, in fact, decidedly bullish across the board, even though there are signs now that the UK may be having its recession rebound on some bad data that came out, but they're trying to be very, very bullish here this morning. Here, U.S. is a little bit mixed. We have the Dow futures slightly higher as we wait for these big bank earnings reports, with the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ futures lower. In fact, NASDAQ is getting hit the hardest after that big surge yesterday afternoon in the tech giants. Just a big surge up yesterday. If we take a look at oil this morning, oil is higher. We're resurging with these Middle East jitters and that possibility of Iran attacking Israel. And we're looking at oil up $1.20 a barrel at 86.22. Brent is right back up above $90 a barrel at 90.86, up $1.12 a barrel. Natural gas is just ever so slightly lower here this morning. And then if we take a look at our precious metals, boy, gold is surging big time here today. If you notice yesterday, it was going down just a little bit and then turned around and shot up over $30 an ounce yesterday. This morning here in the pre-market, it's up $44 an ounce. We are at $2,416 an ounce on gold this morning. Silver is up this morning over $1. Copper, platinum, and palladium also resuming upside moves. Crypto this morning, Bitcoin is up $450 a coin, but the majority of coins are kind of flat to a little bit lower here today. If we look at our bond yields here this morning, they have eased. Well, the 2-year bond has eased just a tiny little bit anyway, to 4.92%, but unfortunately we're not seeing any easing in the 10-year. It's at 4.54%, and the 30-year is at 4.64%. So we continue to see pressure in the bond market, and the bond market kind of disagreeing with the overall stock market as it surged back up yesterday. So we'll want to be watching that closely. So what does all that mean for the day? Well, how about we settle in? Let's buckle up. Let's get ready for the Friday edition of the Morning Market Prep video. Good morning once again, everyone, and thank you so much for being here. I very much appreciate it. Let's take a look at some of these charts and see if we can figure out how we might want to approach the market for today on this Friday. Happy Friday, everyone. Yesterday was kind of an interesting day where we had a relatively good PPI number, kind of surprise on the PPI number. And then we immediately started to sell back off in the morning and made new lows in the indexes, and then had a big tech surge that brought everything right back up. And because we have so many big techs in all three indexes, the Dow Industrial Average is no longer an industrial average in any way, shape, or form, because we have such big tech companies in the Dow. You know, when we have Microsoft, Amazon, and Apple, they absolutely dominate the Dow in just those three tech giants. And so we saw that surge all the way back up as tech really began to surge yesterday. So kind of an interesting market condition for sure. But let's take a look and see if we can shake off a little bit of bias, and let's look at these charts and see if we can figure out how we might want to approach it for today. First off, if the bulls find inspiration this morning, well, let's just take a peek here. You can see we rallied right back up to this resistance yesterday and left that little hammer pattern showing up here yesterday. So if we can push back up through that resistance, then we'll be pressing into this downtrend here in the chart, and this next level of resistance is where I'd want to be watching to see if we can push back up through there. Every reason to believe they could if we can get good bank earnings, and if we can break through there, breaking that downtrend that we have, then I'm going to look right through here where we can kind of tie all these candles together. That would be that next resistance. Beyond that, we're probably pushing on up to retest this bigger resistance here in the chart. If the bears were to find inspiration today, well, we can kind of see from yesterday's candle where we would likely go. Pushing back down into this area would not be out of the question if we were to find some bearish inspiration. And past that point, we're looking at areas maybe down here and areas down in here if the bears were to re-engage today. Let's take a look at our moving averages here just quickly, and you want to make sure and notice that our 50-day moving average here is starting to flatten out now. It hasn't started to roll over yet. So here again, if we rally back up, we're going to run into also those moving averages as a little bit of resistance, and you can see they're starting to cross down, providing maybe a little bit of a bearish moving average squeeze here. So keep an eye on that. Now, if we look at the SPY, absolutely different, where we pushed up really strongly. We held this price support. We made a tiny little new low yesterday, held this price support, and then bounced right up hard with those tech stocks pushing so hard yesterday and pushing right up into this downtrend and price resistance in the chart. So if the bulls can find that inspiration today, and probably every reason to believe that they could, then we would push right through this area of the chart and be looking at the next resistance up here and possible breakout for all-time highs. So keep an eye on that if those bulls can engage here on the day. However, if the bears could engage, you can see this would be a classic area to show a failure. And we got a little bit of pain showing up here this morning, not a lot, but we'll want to watch that closely. If we were to fail along this resistance and downtrend, well, that's the classic failure, right? And we would start pushing back down into this area of the chart. Of course, breaking down through there is where it gets a little bit uncomfortable, and we start seeing some failure patterns coming in here in the market if that were to occur. Now, once again, if we look at the technicals here, very different picture here on the SPY, holding above its 50-day moving average. Really no fear showing up here in the SPY, despite the fact that it really is only a couple of handfuls of companies doing all of the lifting of the S&P 500, and that's those tech giants. So interesting chart to be sure. If we take a look at our QQQ, well, the QQQ had the best day, just zoomed to the upside yesterday, and with really no apparent reason, just a massive zoom to the upside on the NASDAQ, particularly Apple, just really ripped it to the upside yesterday. So as we pushed this on up, notice we tested this price resistance here in the chart, and we snuck out over that little downtrend here. So if the bulls can continue to find inspiration here, I would look for that resistance to break. And once that resistance breaks, well, then we're right back up here testing all-time highs in the QQQ and possibly blue sky above on the NASDAQ. However, if the bears were to come back in today, well, this would be one of those classic failure areas, kind of like right here, that classic failure area of the chart pushing into that resistance, rebounding up. If we were to push back to the downside, well, first I would look right in this little area right here for some support on the cues. We might catch some of this price action right in here and hold in that area. If we push beyond that point, I'm going to come right down here. I'm going to grab some of these price bottoms as that next level. Breaking down below there, I think we're probably going to be coming into that big black candle low and then this major price support in the chart. So watch that carefully. And here again on the technicals, very different picture. We're holding on to that 50-day moving average, extremely resilient in these tech giants. It just seems like there is no price that people are not willing to pay for some of these tech giants, as we have, Meta and Nvidia pushing back up to recent highs. So watch those closely. And then if we take a look at our IWM, well, IWM on the other side of the coin again, no big tech giants in here to help out the IWM. And so it continued to just kind of languish here underneath some price resistance in the chart and downtrend. But if those bulls have inspiration today and can push this up off of this support area here, well, breaking up through that resistance, and I'd start looking at levels right up in here, see if we can test that next level, and then of course breaking on through there, we're probably pushing up into this level of chart. And once we break through this area of resistance, this really changes the index quite a bit, breaking through this major area of resistance up here, if we can get up there and hold. So far we've just not been able to do that. We punched through here the other day, left a kind of nasty little evening star. We tried it here and rejected it. So yeah, just that would be a stretch getting up there, but it's certainly possible. And then if the bears were to find inspiration today, well, you could see it really wouldn't take a whole lot of effort to see a failure in here, and breaking down below this support area wouldn't be all that much of a surprise if that were to occur. And then if we start breaking on down, we'll catch some levels down in here and push right on down here toward this trend line that I've got in here. We might catch a little support on that as well. So kind of keeping that in mind. You do want to notice, these bigger upside trends here in IWM have broken, and that possibility that we really could catch a little bit of downside in IWM if the bears were to come in. Once again, if we look at the technicals, we're underneath our 50-day moving average. One of my favorite shorting patterns is what we call a blue ice failure, and that's where we break down below the 50, we kind of hold or rally back up to the 50, and then we get that pressure pushing it on back to the downside. So watch carefully for that possibility in the Russell. If we take a look at our VIX continued to run up yesterday, and then that big surge in just a very small group of stocks changed things completely. We just got all kinds of giddy about the big push up in tech, but you'll want to notice we still held on to this upside trend. We held on to this price support in the chart, and right in there on that little upside trend. So if the bulls find inspiration today, then I would look for this area to break and push right on down into that trend, and maybe even pushing on through on there. And we would be looking for markets to maybe reignite to the upside with some inspiration. Of course, if the bears were to find inspiration and we were to push up off of here, well, there certainly is reason to expect that we could come up here and retest that resistance here in the chart and maybe even break through. And if we do break through up here, that's where real fear starts to come in, and we can start picking out levels up here, 17 handles and above. Looks like a possibility if those bears were really to engage. Let's take a look at our T20s, our T21, 22. If we take a look at that, bouncing up yesterday on that nice surge up. Now, one of the one of the common things that happens is when we get oversold, we get a relief. And what was interesting yesterday is usually we get more of a broad-based relief. What we got yesterday was just a very small number of stocks pushing the indexes back up. But that was that relief coming up out of that bullish reversal zone here. And was a good relief overall in T2122. Now, if the bulls can continue to find inspiration today, then we certainly have that possibility. Notice how much upside opportunity that we have in here if those bulls can get going and find some inspiration here today. If the bears, however, were to find inspiration, well, we opened up a door for a pushback if, for some reason, those big bank reports happen to disappoint. Now, keeping in mind, it's not uncommon for us to rally back up and come back up here in the middle of the road before reversing and coming back down as well. So we may still have more upside relief that could come in the market. It wouldn't be a major surprise. Let's take a look at our T2108. Now our T2108, you can see yesterday, well, it turned up, but it certainly wasn't impressive. A little hook down here suggesting we might catch a bit of a bounce or a lift, but yeah, it wasn't all that impressive. The good news is in here that we held on to some price support in the chart, kind of hanging in there, but you'll notice we're well below 50% of the stocks above their 40-day moving average. This was quite a change this week as they slipped back down. So if we can get that bullish inspiration today, I would look for that push that could bring us back up into that area and maybe cross back up, testing some of these resistance levels here in the chart. If the bears find inspiration, well, this would be kind of an ugly move if that occurs. And I think we would really start to see fear come up in the market if this drops on down and we test some of these areas of support here on that index. Our T2107 held up better than T2108, percentage of stocks above the 200-day. You want to notice that we've been up here in this very, very frothy area of the market. We did break this trend that was to the upside, but the good news is we're still kind of holding on to some price support here in that chart. So if the bulls can find that inspiration today, there's every reason to believe we could break that trend back to the upside, start pressing into these resistance levels again, and maybe even push beyond that. If the bears were to engage and find inspiration, a push back down, maybe catching some support here in the chart. And we still are well above that 50% area here. So psychologically, we're still in pretty good shape on T2107. And one of the reasons I think that's the case is I think we're seeing that rotation happening into a lot of the smaller cap stocks. Some of the any of the profits that are being taken in some of the high flyers out there kind of rotating into more of these safe haven plays, dividend players and things like that. Let's take a look at our T2101. T2101, well, interesting as we surged up yesterday, and this is the thing that we've been seeing. We're getting the impression that the market is super bullish when we get just a handful or a couple handfuls of big tech stocks rushing to the upside. But notice what happened here yesterday. Our breadth hooked over and showed that we didn't have breadth in the market yesterday on that bullish buy wave. So we'll want to be watching that closely, because when we were selling off, this was early in the day, this was stretching higher. The energy was on the sell side, and then as the bulls came in with just those select few stocks, well, our breadth kind of fell over here. So we'll want to watch this closely. If we get bullish, we need to see that moving up on a bullish move. We don't want to be seeing that move up on a bearish move, unless you're a bear. So watch that carefully. Let's take a look at our economic calendar for today. Now, our economic calendar, we know we've got a couple things coming here this morning. We've got import-export prices. They are expecting import prices to remain flat at 0.3. Export prices, they're expecting to improve to a 0.3. Well, actually fall to a 0.3 from a 0.8. So kind of keep an eye on those this morning. And this could become pretty important as we see the dollar strengthen. So watch that carefully. And then we've got consumer sentiment here this morning. They're suggesting consumer sentiment is falling a little bit to 79.0 from 79.4. Now, maybe I have a bias here, but my impression of what I see from the consumers is if there's a miss today in these economic numbers, it might be here. I think we could see this go a little bit lower. I really don't think consumers are happy, although the government continues to say everything's great, it's looking better, everything's good, but I don't think the consumers are feeling that overall. Could be wrong, but watch that one this morning. And then, of course, Baker Hughes rig count, and then we've got more Fed speak, hooray, as they continue to pontificate all the way through the week here into Friday. Let's take a look at our earnings calendar here for today. And this is where the fireworks are going to be this morning. We have already got a report from JP Morgan this morning. And JP Morgan moving lower here after its report. That's not helping things out here. And we're seeing Dow futures right now down 100 points. As a result of that, so we may get some bounce back up once they do the conference call and things like that. So watch that carefully here today. We're going to hear from BlackRock today. Looks like BlackRock is trying to bounce up here this morning, a little bit higher on BlackRock. We've got Citibank that will be reporting today. I don't think that number has come out yet. We're going to be hearing from Progressive Insurance. PGR. Now, insurance prices have been zooming to the upside. Maybe that's going to help Progressive when they report here today. We're going to hear from State Street. These are the notables for today. A little pop and drop going on there so far this morning on State Street. And we're going to hear from Wells Fargo here this morning. So Wells looks like it went down pretty heavily on the JP Morgan, but already bouncing back up. It has not reported to my knowledge here this morning. So keep an eye on those as we begin the official kickoff of earnings season here in the second quarter. So those will be the notables for today. No notables this afternoon to be worried about. Let's take a look at some stocks that could be setting up for today. But before we do that, everyone, if this is the first time you've seen these videos, if you could please click that subscribe button on YouTube and also click that bell icon when it pops up so you'll be notified every time I post a video. And if you find these videos to be useful or helpful, please do me that favor. Click that thumbs up button, leave a brief comment. That helps the channel to continue to grow. And I want to say thank you so much for that. I do appreciate it. Hey, by the way, next Tuesday evening, I will be doing a public e-learning session. And if you have an idea what you'd like me to talk about in that public e-learning session, do me a favor, leave it in the comments below. That would actually help me out, and if I could talk on a subject that could be helpful to you, I'd love to do that. Let's take a look at some of these stocks that could be setting up. And remember, guys, these are not recommendations to buy or sell any security. Make sure you do your own due diligence. Make sure you're following your trade rules. It's been a weird week of high volatility, big point whipsaws here in the market. Very, very challenging week. Unless you're in, those big tech sectors that continue to just grow and grow and grow. So make sure you do you do some careful deliberations on any trade that you take, making sure that you take into account your risk tolerance and your trading rules. Never blindly follow anyone else's trade ideas. Well, one of the things I have to mention this morning, because my goodness, these are some big moves that we're seeing in currencies as those bond yields continue to move up. Dollar strengthening, moving to the upside here. And I had suggested we may move on up and fill this gap. It looks to me like we're well on the way of filling that gap here to the upside. If I were to draw a trend line across here, notice we've broken that downtrend here. If it really is going to depend on how it deals with this price resistance right in here. But if we continue to extend this up, there's going to be more and more pressure here on the overall upside of the market. So keep an eye on that as the dollar continues to strengthen. And of course, my goodness, when we look at precious metals, gold just unbelievably parabolic, just surging to the upside as fear seems to be coming into the market here just a little bit, and we're seeing a run to safety in these precious metals. So keep an eye on that. Go gold. PHYS. If you want some physical gold and a much cheaper play, you could look at this. I think they need a rest or pullback. I wouldn't want to be chasing them here, but it's hard to deny when they continue to run to the upside like this. If we take a look at silver, boy, silver really stretching up here, breaking through a major resistance here in the chart. Notice we're up here right now. I'm going to pull this back, breaking through a major resistance here on this weekly. If it holds up here, that'll be the key. So watch that. I would also suggest palladium here. This is a pretty interesting pattern. If we look at our moving averages, you can see we're holding above our 50-day, pushing up toward that 200. I'd keep an eye on that if we continue to see this run to safety. Palladium might be a place to look as well here in these charts. Obviously, you can look to the miners here. The miners have just been zooming here to the upside. Now, once again, I really don't want to chase this. A little rest or pullback is what I would love to see in that before I jumped on something like that in these miners, but it's undeniable how strong they are moving up. And you can even look to aluminum here. Aluminum setting up in a possible bullish pattern here. Alcoa, nice little resting pattern here. You want to keep in mind it's going to report earnings on the 17th, so that may change your decision here. But look at the possibility of this maybe popping through that big resistance here in the chart, and we hold up here, then we've got some more room to move to the upside. So keep an eye on Alcoa, and then you've got to also be keeping an eye on steel. Now, the last few days, Steel Dynamics has pulled back here to its trend. I would keep an eye on this, that possibility that we could break through and push right on out of there. And taking a look at stocks like FCX here in copper, kind of consolidated, rested over here to its trend. You can see it's resting against a resistance level in the chart. All-time high would be up here. So if we can pop out of this area here, every reason to believe that we can continue to stretch on up toward that all-time high here in copper. We're in a pretty strong copper deficit situation here around the world, and so there is some supply reasoning on this as well. So take a look at some of those copper plays moving pretty good here. As you guys know, I've been kind of keeping an eye on this. Qualcomm, been mentioning it over and over, and Qualcomm, popped this alert in here that I had, and then just kind of struggled against this resistance in the chart. If those techs are going to continue to pop, then there's every reason to believe that we could break through here on Qualcomm and even come up here and test this high up here So watch that carefully. Still looking pretty good overall in Qualcomm. Take a look at stocks like TEVA. TEVA continue to hold in this nice little upside trend, holding into that support area of the chart. If we can reignite to the upside, every reason to believe that we can push on through up there. I'm still liking, even though we had some pullbacks, still liking some of these stocks in the food related area. Keep an eye on Mosaic. Keep an eye on stocks like Tyson, holding in this bullish pattern, maybe trying to break through some resistance up here. Keep an eye on things like Hormel, showing that bullishness, holding in here. In that chart, and that possibility that we could start extending some of those food stocks to the upside. Kroger has been one of those that really zoomed to the upside here, and it's rested that pattern. Nice little consolidating move. I would start keeping an eye on Kroger, because if it can hold in here and start pushing on up, at least every reason to believe at this point that that is possible, I would watch that closely. And then I have to mention things going on here in oil. Oil pushing on higher. Take a look at XLE. Nice little resting pattern. Could be extending on through to the upside, and you can just take a look at a lot of these oil sector stocks. Phillips 66 had this nice little resting pullback in here. If it can hold this area of support and reignite with what we're seeing today in oil prices moving up and those Middle East jitters, I would keep an eye on a lot of those oil sector stocks here that certainly have some potential to the upside. So with that, everyone, hey, I want to wish you all a fantastic day. I hope your Friday is awesome, and I also want to hope that you have a wonderful weekend, a restful weekend with you and your family. Get out there and maybe enjoy some of that sunshine if your weather's warming up. Be careful, be safe, and I'll see you right back here bright and early Monday morning. Wishing you all the very best this weekend. Take care, everyone.